Analysis, everyone. I'm your host, Rob Kowalski, and this is my special guest, Zach, or as you like to be known, the Revolting Man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Zach.
Thank you, Rob. We appreciate you having us.
Yeah, I decided this actually just to bring on Zach because we are in some perilous times right now with everything that's going on in the world, and prepping is something that I'm doing, and I'm not really sure if I'm doing it as good as I should be. So I thought this would be a great conversation. So I entitled this episode "Peace Through Strength: Prepping for Normal People." And let me tell you who Zach is and why he's qualified to talk about this subject. Zach is a Marine. He's a father of 15, and most recently a grandfather. His focus is on preparedness, homesteading, and Second Amendment issues, but his ultimate goal is free men to be builders and protectors in a world of death and destruction. Zach has his own YouTube channel called The Revolting Man, where he talks about all the things that we're going to talk about today and a lot more. So we're excited to get in. But before we do dive in, let me go ahead and I want to tag everybody in the Waiting Works community. I decided to air this episode there as well today because there are a lot of women, single women in that group. And I'm sure that they're wondering what they can do to be prepared for what's coming down the pipe. So if everybody would just drop a comment, say hello, let us know that you were here, even if you only watch part of this, the replay or the live. Just let us know where you were watching from, and if you have any questions, we will certainly try to get to them. If we have time, we'll go through and we might even post some of them on the screen. All right, real quick before we jump in, I just want to thank our sponsor, Charm City Countdown. That's my New Year's Eve event. It's the largest all-inclusive New Year's Eve charity gala on the East Coast, and it's returning this year for its 15th year, held every year at the BWI Hilton Hotel. And this is one of those parties where you can leave your wallet and your purse at home. Everything is included with your ticket, all your food, all your drinks, all your entertainment, even your tips, coat check, parking, everything's included. And you can take the elevator home to your room if you get a hotel room. So that's it. You can go to charmcitycountdown.com for more information about that, or if you'd like to get a ticket. And now let's just dive in. So, Revolting Man, before we get started, I like to do a little segment that we call This or That, where I just fire 5 rapid this or that questions at you in rapid succession, and you tell us, one or the other. Basically gives everyone a chance to get to know you a little bit better. You ready? All right, here we go. This is referring to a bug out location, rural cabin or a rural cabin in the woods or underground bunker.
Rural cabin in the woods.
Okay. All right. As far as food storage, canned goods or freeze-dried meals?
Canned goods.
Okay. Water purification, filters or chemical treatments?
Filters.
Filters. Okay. Energy source, solar or portable generators?
Neither. You've got to be able to do this without energy.
Okay. All right. We're gonna get into that.
But if you force me, I'm sorry. Let me play the game. I apologize.
That's okay.
Suppress my stigma here. If you had to choose one, then obviously solar.
Solar. Okay. Oh, it's not obvious to me. Shoot, I was thinking maybe generator. Okay, solar. All right. Bartering items, precious metals or everyday necessities like food and water?
Which way? What that you're giving or receiving?
Bartering.
Okay, but there's 2 sides of the barter. So are you giving precious metals to get everyday items, or are you offering your everyday items?
I'm talking about what you possess to get things. So would it be better to
what
have
do you want to have for barter? So you never, you're never going to want to give up your necessary items like food and water. So you have to have something else to barter. So precious metals, obviously. Some people say bullets, have spare bullets you can barter, but you worry about if you give people bullets that they're going to give them back to you at high velocity.
Yeah.
But honestly, and I'm going to play the Sigma card here. Honestly, you the whole point of prepping is that you don't have to barter.
Gotcha.
Because either way, you're giving up something you need.
Right. No, that makes sense. All right, everybody, if you would, drop a comment. Let us know that you were here. Say hello. Let us know what city you're watching from if you like. This, again, is The Revolting Man. He's got a YouTube channel. You guys could go check him out, and he's all about preparedness. Even though I have this podcast being streamed in my men's group, the Unplugged Christian Alphas, but also in our other group, the Waiting Works community, even though it's not necessarily relates to waiting. I think this is, for what's going on in the world right now, this is a pretty appropriate topic that everybody's thinking about. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me, ask me questions about how should I prepare. I'm not a professional. I've read a little bit. I know what I'm doing, but I really wanted to get somebody on like you that could give some higher level advice. So yeah, let's dive into it, man. How did you get onto this preparedness, and how start your YouTube channel? What made you passionate about this particular subject?
So it started, a lot of men of our generation, my parents were they were convinced that Jesus was coming back every day. Every day Jesus was coming back tomorrow. And of course, really into the whole was it Tim LaHaye, This Planet? What was all the really big on the 7-year tribulation and all that stuff.
Left Behind.
Yeah, Left Behind stuff. And even before that, there was this movie they would show in churches back in the 70s. I can't, maybe that was Left Behind.
A Thief in the Night. Dude, that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I saw that in church. It scared the shit out of me.
Hell out of you. So it started with that. But then I was turning 25 in Y2K, year 2000. I turned 25. I had a young family. I was just getting out of the Marine Corps. I was bored, and I desperately did not want to live a normal life in the real world. And I was very, very, very excited about the Y2K collapse, because that was going to keep me from having to grow up and be an adult. So I bought I bought a rifle. And it was an okay rifle, but it wasn't the rifle I needed. I bought a rifle and 2,000 rounds of ammunition, and I said, "Oh, okay, we're ready." And of course, I was completely unprepared. I was nowhere near what I should have been doing. And of course, by the grace of God, nothing happened. Y2K, but ever since then, it's always been at the back or forefront of my mind. Really, we're in a world in decline. We are in a society that is doing everything it can to kill itself. It tries to commit suicide every day, 1,000 times a day. And at some point, it's going to succeed,
Yeah.
And things just go wrong, You don't have to have societal collapse. There was this, and I don't remember, I always forget to look this up. There was this time in Australia in recent memory where like the power grid went down in this city. And it was down for weeks, and they couldn't get it back up. And it wasn't because there was, aliens or, EMPs. There was just something weird that happened, and this power grid collapsed. And within a week, all the high rises were uninhabitable. They had to essentially evacuate the entire city. And you never even hear about it. Because it wasn't some big, sexy, crazy societal collapse. It was just something weird that happened. And people were on their own for weeks at a time.
Right.
And if you're going to have a family, if you're going to have kids, grandkids, you just have a responsibility to not trust. Hungry people do stupid things.
Yeah.
And the more cushion you can give yourself before you have to start making compromises, the fewer compromises you have to make. It really is just about giving yourself freedom of conscience. The borrower is servant to the lender. If they have food and you don't have food, it gets very, very, very hard for you to not be a slave.
Right.
And and that's really just been it. And then, of course, as our world gets dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber, and you want to have less and less and less and less and less to do with it, it becomes more important to just continually withdraw to give them fewer hooks into you. And so you end up being a prepper, and then you end up veering off into homesteading, and the next thing you've got a beard and you live at the end of a dirt road, and you have gun racks in your bedroom.
Well, somebody said nice guns. I thought they were talking about me for a second, but I think they were talking about you. No, I don't think so. Man, Okay, so yeah, I don't know which direction to go. So I don't know if I've told you this because we did talk offline. But so 23 years ago, when I became a Christian, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit. God told me some things that were going to happen in the world. One of the things is just started to happen was this war in Israel, and then he told me that the United States and China are going to go to war with each other, and he told me that the dollar was going to collapse and it's going to cause a global depression. So I bet my life on those things happening, and I feel like they're probably pretty close at this point. And I was actually looking like I've been prepping a little bit. I started a food pantry. I bought a shotgun. Started buying some silver. That for the most part, that's about most of what I've been doing. And I've actually been looking now, as thinking about where maybe I would move, in the new year with the threat of World War III looming. And I don't know. Some people say it's safer to be in America, even with the war. If you're overseas, you might be vulnerable. So maybe we can talk about some of that. But I'd love to just kind of kick it off like with the most basic, practical things that someone should do right now. Because I feel like the writing is more on the wall than it's ever been. People are starting to get more concerned. People are talking about World War III. So I think people are open to. They're not just think we're conspiracy theorists here. But what would be like some of the first suggestions that you would give somebody that was just starting out on their prepping journey?
So you're off to a good start. You did some really smart things, but you skip step one, and step one is water purification. You can't live without water, and you need multiple gallons of clean water per day per person for drinking and cooking. And
how do you do that?
So
how do you do
it? So this is why I like to talk about prepping for normal people, because this is something you can do and be normal. I think you need two pieces of equipment, and I usually try to veer away from equipment. I think you need something like a countertop Berkey water filter, and that's not an insubstantial investment. Those are a little expensive. Now there are cheaper options. And
not like a Brita, because I have a Brita.
I've never looked into the Brita. I'm not sure how, but anything's better than nothing.
I do have one of those straws my sister got me.
The life
that
straw,
supposedly
the life,
the
life
that's
straws
not gonna
are good. They're not going to do enough volume for. They would be perfect for a single man like you. Obviously, someone in my situation, I need to have more water. So I've got a Berkey water filter, and then I also have a hand pump back pump. A Katahdin is the one I have right now. And you can just throw it in the stream or wherever, and you pump it, and it makes you substantial amounts of clean water to keep you alive. Unfortunately, there's really no substitute for just some basic pieces of equipment in this instance. There's workarounds, but they're not good workarounds, and you just need to go ahead and bite the bullet and have two options for water filtration. And then the second thing a lot of people don't realize about this is that they might not have water where they're at. If the power goes down, well, your water system has to have power to work. To have pressure. We've all been in those situations where you get the boil water notice. Something's happened to the municipal water system and it's not clean, and they want you to boil it. But that assumes there's still pumps that are pressurizing that system to run that water into your house. You can't filter water you don't have. And so you need to also have in the back of your mind, all right, where do I have to go to get this water that I'm going to filter, and what's it going to take to get it back to where I plan to filter it at? That is a historically, in the history of our species, that has been the first primary foremost concern of just existence. You had to locate your life near a water source.
So let me ask you, because I I live, I don't know, quarter mile away from this body of water. It's like a tributary of the Chesapeake, and so it's brackish.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to take a 50-gallon barrel down there, let's say, and fill it up, and I have one of these filters that you're talking about, which I want to get the name of you, because I want to name from you. I want to put that in the show notes for everybody, because I think I know which one you're talking about, the ones that you pump. I've seen them, and They aren't cheap. But would that filter brackish water too, or does it have to be fresh?
So they specifically say not salt water. And I don't live on the coast, so I have not. This is something I need to look into. Excellent question. I don't have that answer, and I apologize. I do know the ones I have specifically say don't do salt water. I don't know if that's just because they clog up quick. I mean, obviously, if that's what you had, then, by God, give it a shot.
Right.
But yeah, that would be something I need to look into, and obviously you need to look into. But you just said something. You said take a 50-gallon drum down and fill it with water. Water weighs 8.5 pounds per gallon. So 50-gallon drum of water, you're looking at almost 500 pounds worth of weight. This is
I can't lift that.
I mean, you got the guns like they said, but those are some serious guns. And you're going to use 5 gallons of water a day. Now, not all 5 gallons has to be clean, potable drinking water, but between your washing and your dishes and everything, you're going to end up using about 5 gallons of water a day per person. So,
okay. So that's step number one. Step number one is figure out your water situation. It's not enough just to have water stored, like clean water, because you could have some of these 50-gallon things, jugs filled up
that's
in
great.
your basement.
Now, if you can do that, and you can, and I know people who do, who have thousands and thousands of gallons of water stored, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Most people don't have the ability to, because remember, again, 8.5 pounds per gallon of water. So where are you storing hundreds of pounds of, even 100 gallons of water now is almost 1,000 pounds. And think about a 100-gallon fish tank. This is a metric buttload of water.
And how long is water good for if you were to keep it in barrels?
About a year or two, because it doesn't matter what you do to it. It's got bacteria in it. Well, I say if it's potable and you expect to be able to drink it straight out of the barrel, about a year or two. If you keep sunlight away from it, and it was clean when you put it in there, purified, then it's going to be good for about a year or two. And then you're going to have to think about either boiling it, because at that point, if it's purified water going in, then the only thing you have to really worry about is the bacteria that grows in the meantime. And so then it would just need to be boiled.
Okay, that's good. So that's something I'm going to work on. I'm going to get a couple jugs and fill it up, and worst case is you have to boil it. So then that goes to my next question. If you have to boil it, let's just say, and there's no power. So, I mean, if you have a gas stove, I guess your gas would work, but then you don't want to count on that either, I guess, right? So you need some kind of alternative cooking supply source.
So people ask, when people want to say, what's my first skill? How do I test myself the first time for being a prepper? And this is normal person prepping. This isn't weird bunker prepper. You need to try to boil a gallon of water in your backyard with wood that you've collected. And you just need to see what that takes. And you got to boil it for a minute. So you need to get to a rolling boil. And so you need to try to boil a gallon of water for a minute with a fire with wood that you've collected. And it just gives you a little bit of an indication of what you're facing here. Because the amount of wood it takes to boil a gallon of water, especially over an open fire, if you don't have a wood stove or a mass rocket heater, any of the specialized stuff, if you're doing normal person stuff, it takes a substantial amount of wood to boil a gallon of water. Really? That's why I say ultimately you just need to have some robust water filtration capabilities, and you can make that look normal. Those Berkeys, like I said, they're expensive. They're $300-400, I think, for the cheap one. And there's knockoff options that are, I say Berkey, that's the name everyone lots of folks will recognize. This kind of a popular option. There's cheaper versions, but you want something like that is going to filter you a gallon or two of water at a time, and always have you clean water on tap. Because the alternatives are just incredibly labor and energy intensive. And we're talking about situations where your calories, because labor is calories, and that's the next thing we'll get into when we're ready. Labor is calories, and energy is precious. I mean, precious.
So, and I just want to mention this because anytime I've talked about things like this in the past, you always get the people, the Christians, we don't need to worry. We don't need to be afraid. We're saved. And I'm like, listen, it doesn't mean you don't use wisdom. Like when Joseph knew that there was going to be a plague, he prepared. 7 years he saved, and then it saved the nation because of it. So you have to be smart. Yes, Jesus is coming back, but do you starve until he gets here? I don't. I mean, I would rather be as comfortable as possible. This is probably why a lot of people will take the mark of the beast. They'll fall away. The apostasy. The Bible says there's going to be an apostasy because as soon as the shit hits the fan, people are going to be like, let me get some water, please. Give me that mark. Right?
Will absolutely sell their soul for food and water, and won't even. I mean, and will know they're doing it in the moment. Someone will sit there saying, "I know that I am damning my soul for all eternity, but I am so hungry, or my children are and they'll make that that trade in a heartbeat, because we're not just souls. We're souls and bodies, and our bodies, our flesh is created, and our flesh and filling the appetites of our flesh existed in the garden. It's part of God's plan that we have appetites and that they be fulfilled. So saying, "Oh, my flesh," it's a ridiculous claim to make. Anyone who makes that claim has never been hungry or thirsty. Right. That's very much a bougie middle class American thing to say. I'm going to starve to death for 45 days and die from diarrhea because I drank ditch water, and that's going to somehow honor Jesus. I have nothing but swear words for people like that, and I'm not going to use them on your channel, but that is just one of the dumbest. There's some pretty dumb things out there these days. That's one of the dumber.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's keep going. So we got clean water, number one, water filtration, some way to filter the water, but then maybe some storing some water, and then the first real kind of like task or homework assignment for everybody would be boil a gallon of water over an open flame and see if you have it. So would you need like a significant amount of wood?
You need a significant amount of wood.
Well, not just for the 1 gallon of water, but I'm just saying for when everything starts to collapse. Would you recommend like a large supply of wood?
So again, that's a lot of space, and if you have the space to stockpile wood, that's fantastic. Do it. But when this is prepping for normal people, and so we're talking about, and this is just what I envision. I could be completely wrong because I'm as abnormal. I really don't know what normal is, but I think about people on a 1/4 acre lot in a subdivision, and they have to live. They can't turn their life into prepping. They have to live a normal life,
right?
And so they just don't have the infrastructure to even amass that much firewood, store it for long periods of time, and then the stuff's got a shelf life. It starts rotting, bugs get into it. The older it gets, the less so you want the ability to collect wood when you need it, and that is a skill set, and that is not an easy skill set, and I'll talk about that all day long because it's one of my passions. I heat this house entirely with wood. We don't have any other source of heat in here. We do a lot of cooking. I don't think it's not hyperbole to say that we cook about 1/3 of our food over open wood fires. So this is something I know well, and I'll be happy to talk about. But I think for that normal person, they really need to be thinking about how they can subsist without energy. Firewood is energy, and there's no real good way to store energy off the grid.
I bought a big old bag of charcoal because I was Googling some stuff, and somebody said charcoal was good to have. Aluminum.
How big's your bag? Did you get that 50-pound bag?
No, I don't think it was that big, but it didn't feel 50 pounds, let's say, when I lifted it, but it was big. I mean, it was like almost, up to my chest. Maybe it was 50 pounds. I don't know.
It'll last you a week when you start using it.
Yeah.
For all your cooking, it'll last you a good week. Okay. And that might be enough.
Right.
And don't laugh at that. When I say it'll last you a week, I'm not blowing that off.
Yeah.
Being able to last a week is a big deal in an emergency, a really big deal. All these subcultures, gun guys are terrible. We got the gym bro thing, where you got the guy walking around, broad even lift, and I really hate that guy, and every subculture has it, and I don't want to be that guy. Being prepared for a week puts you ahead of 99.9% of Americans who after a week of a grid down, they're dead. They've died.
Right.
So I'm not blowing it off when I say you're looking at about a week. The less you have to consume those things, the longer they'll last. So even if you do want to stockpile a couple 100 pounds of charcoal, and you can, and charcoal is a wonderful thing. If you can keep it dry, it lasts a long time. And it has a lot of uses, including for water purification. It looks awful, and it tastes terrible. It looks like a gray chalk water, but it is actually pure and clean.
So you can pour the water through the charcoal, and it filters out the.
Yeah. Huh. You put the charcoal in like a cheesecloth.
Yeah.
And just let the water gravity filter through there, and what comes out is most likely safe. There's another really good improvised water filtration system that not many people know about, and it's not that hard. Anyone could make it work, but you get a tubing. You got to be able to have a container that you can get a little piece of tubing out of the bottom, and then you whittle about a 2 or 3 inch piece of wood that slides up in that tubing and stops it up. But then the water will filter through that wood and start dripping out the bottom. And that actually, it's very, very slow, but it's actually an extremely effective way to filter water.
Yeah,
but that may be step 2 or step 3.
Yeah.
If my choice was to filter my water through raw charcoal or rig up that system, I would be rigging up that system in a heartbeat, because that wood system actually does work.
How much food do you suggest? Because I think I read 6 months, so you should have 6 months worth of food, and that's what I've been trying to do. Is it takes a little bit to get up to that point, but what do you recommend?
See, so there's the simple answer, and then there's the complex answer. Let me give you the simple answer first, which I hate doing because it's so simple. You could turn me off after this and not listen to another word I say, because this is so simple and it solves so many problems that well, anyway, peanut butter.
Dude, I got a ton of it downstairs.
Dude, go look at how many calories are in a jar of peanut butter.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah.
I have what I call my get home bag, and all of the food in my get home bag is 5 jars of peanut butter. I can grab it. It's right over here. And it's like 2 weeks worth of calories. And you don't have to cook it, which is because that requires energy, and
right.
Energy is a big deal. And you can eat it on the go, and it's a fairly complete, as far as an emergency situation.
Yeah.
And I think I looked this up. It is the most calorie dense food you can have. And you can have a pantry with a bunch of peanut butter in it. And if, the weirdos come through because they're looking for your hordes, they go, well, they've got a weird amount of peanut butter, but it's not, it doesn't like, go prepper,
right.
steal all their shit. So I tell people, just have a really weird amount of peanut butter set back. Yes, it's shelf stable. It doesn't go bad. You don't have to refrigerate it. If the refrigeration goes out, it doesn't go bad. If you're in like a flood or something, those peanut butter jars are relatively watertight. They don't get ruined and like I said, you don't have to cook it. And when you open that jar, you don't have to eat it all right then. It doesn't have
right.
to me, peanut butter is just the perfect prepper food, especially for normal people, because it doesn't look out of place in your pantry. You're not digging holes in your crawl space to hide, 105-gallon buckets of rice and beans.
Right. I do have a lot of pasta and rice too. have accumulated because somebody, I don't know why I thought pasta, because I thought especially if you're going to try to feed people, because pasta goes a long way.
Pasta goes a long way. I like dried beans better. For
definitely more nutritious.
Yeah, they're more calorie dense, and calories. When it comes to food, calories is what we care about. And we don't care if it's GMO. GMO will kill you long term. Starving will kill you a lot quicker. We don't care if they're about nutrition. We care about keeping our bodies functioning in these highly stressful times, and that is calories. The beans have a lot of calories. They've got a lot of protein in them. You can actually live fairly well off of beans. And then the other great thing about beans, and this is next level stuff, this is leaving the normal people stuff and getting on up into weirdo territory. But dried beans can be germinated and planted, and it's actually a seed bank on top of being in food stores. So dried beans check a lot of boxes for me. Now, the problem with the beans is a lot of water, and you got to cook them, and so they're it's a big investment of your resources of energy and water.
Right.
Not unfortunately, I think that's the right investment of keeping body and soul together is the whole point of all of this. So I like dried beans. I'm not as big a fan of rice. I have stockpiled a lot of rice. I feel like now, looking back on it, there's a better bang for my buck than rice.
Right. Well, I got a ton of peanut butter. I got a ton of almond butter. I got a decent amount of tuna fish. Try to think of things like that. So
if you look at that tuna fish, and you've got those little aluminum sealed pouches, is what you're talking about?
No, I actually got the old school little round cans, and I was told to get it in olive oil too, just because of what you're saying. I guess about calories.
I was gonna say, hold on a second.
Sure. Hey, everybody, while you're out there, drop a comment, say hello. Feel free to drop your location, your city that you're in. Okay. Just looking at some of these comments. Is it H&M?
So we got a little can of tuna here. Oh no, yeah, this is tuna. So this is 110 calories, and then this is the sardines, and these may not have the calories on them. These may have been in a package. Well, anyway, you think about 110 calories. The normal person needs 2,000 calories a day. So you essentially need 20 of these just to make the math simple a day.
Versus a couple tablespoons of peanut butter, right?
Right. So, I mean, when we're talking about calorie dense, now, no reason not to have them. I'm not saying that you're still, I have them. So I'm not criticizing having them. Variety is a wonderful thing. But I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a little more advanced. If we're talking to that beginner prepper, and you really you're interested in the number of calories you can put aside, and that tuna is just not as calorie dense, but it's still a wonderful thing to have. Yeah. But you need 2,000 calories a day. How long do what are you preparing for? Are you preparing for a 3.5 year tribulation where you're not allowed to buy or sell?
Dude, that's a great question, man. I've been thinking about that because, everybody's betting on this pre-trib rapture. And I'm like, if you think about everything that we thought, like all the big things, like when everybody assumed Jesus was going to be, conquering king, overthrow the Roman Empire. Not at all what happened. So every time we think it's going to be a certain way, we always get it wrong. So this whole Left Behind, poof, there goes Zach. Where's his clothes? There's his clothes. What happened to Zach? It's not going to be like we think it's going to be. So we have to be prepared for something else. So yeah, I think that's a really good question because I've wondered. For me, I know the call God has on my life, and I feel like if I may be, in the middle of things somehow, helping people, pull people out. I don't know. Saving people at the last, during the tribulation. But if it wasn't for thinking that, I was like, yeah, I should get a freaking underground bunker over in the country or something where I can hide because they're going to be killing us. Right. So that's a good question. Should Christians, is that what Christians should be preparing for? Is 3.5 years, the first half of the tribulation? Why did you say that, by the way? Why did you say the first half and not the whole tribulation?
Are
you a mid-trib rapture person?
No, I'll be honest with you. The farther I go and the more I learn, the less sure I am about anything involving the end times.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not even 100% convinced that the 7-year tribulation is scriptural. And I'm not 100% sure about the rapture either. A pre-Christ return rapture.
You might even be a post-trib.
Yeah, to the extent I can say trib. I think what you just said is one of the wisest things anyone's ever said on this topic. We do not know, and we will not know until the time comes.
Right.
So I think anyone who reads the book of Revelation or those sections in Matthew and Zechariah, I think the sections in Matthew are probably the most practical instructions we get on dealing with that. But if you claim you understand all that and you know exactly what's going on, then I just have reservations about your judgment on that.
Yeah, this is what people act like they're so sure it's pre-trib, and I'm like, listen, there are people way smarter than you that believe in mid-trib, and there are people that are also smarter than you that believe in post-trib. And I'm not saying any of them are right. I'm just saying don't be so sure, because they all study the Bible a lot more than us, and they have a completely different belief. So we can't be sure. So don't, please spare me your pride.
And God's timeline just always seems to be longer than we think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve ate that apple and they died
900 years later. Right.
Jonah went to Nineveh and Nineveh was destroyed 150 years later. It's just always, Christ is going to be the conquering king. It's just not, not what we thought. It's never our timeline. It's always his timeline. And this stuff is about timelines. Everyone thinks they know what the times are going to be. It's going to be 7 years and it's going to be cut in half. And you ask them why. And then they say, well, there's a missing week in Daniel. So each of those 7 days of that missing week is 7 years. And that's the tribute. Well, when you stop and think about it, that's a really sketchy basis to put all of your theology on,
Right. Yeah.
And you really want to be looking your babies in the eye and say, well, I'm sorry, guys. I was convinced it was pre-trib. Now we're all going to go take the mark of the beast. You just don't do that to yourself.
Good. So let me ask you this. You asked me, what are you preparing for? And I'm like, I don't even know, actually. I'd like to get at least 6 months of food. The more, the better. But what are you preparing for? Are you preparing for the 3.5 years? What do you?
So we're a little more advanced in this area. At any time if you take prepping to its illogical extreme, you end up being a homesteader. And so we're at the point.
You said illogical?
Yeah. If you take it to its illogical, extreme, you end up being a homesteader. And so we're at the point where we can produce enough calories to sustain us and the people we love. So my food pantry, the goal for my food pantry is at least one harvest, but preferably 2 harvests, because as long as I can get through to a harvest, I can produce enough beans and sweet potatoes to get us through to the next harvest. So, but you also got to think, what if I had a failed harvest? Okay. So 2 harvests for me. I love my wife. She just sent me a text message. She's trying to get us more viewers by posting the link all over the place.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, she's a hell of a woman. So for me, I'm not at that 2 harvest mark yet. But that would be my standard. We're talking about normal people here, and normal people, they can't do. They don't have the land. They don't have the equipment or the time. So I think most normal people need to have a continuum. They need to start with a week. Can I survive for a week? and then just keep adding weeks. And then at some point you have to stop and say, I am a normal person. I don't have a bunker. You know, I could spend all of my wealth and all of my time and all of my emotional energy worried about what might happen. And an asteroid could fall out of the sky and hit me in the head. You know, at the end of the day, you can't remove all risk. At some points, you have to accept some amount of risk, and it's really hard to draw that a hard line that I think applies to everybody. What I would tell someone is you really have to look at where you're at and say, how long could I survive here with no outside inputs, you know? And that really comes down to water and security, because most everything else can be prepared for.
Security.
But if your water situation and your security situation is bad, then you need to say, all right, at what point would I have to get the hell out of here?
Right.
And then you need enough resources to get you to that point, and then to get you the hell out of there.
Well, let's segue on that, because that's a good place to switch topics. So, like, even the reason I started taking boxing and kickboxing classes recently, just because I'm like, it's just really practical. As things start to go south, crime is going to go up. It's already going up in all these cities. And you're like you said, when people get hungry, they do stupid things. I think I heard, like, when they missed their 7th meal, or I feel it was like some formula, there's a certain number of meals that when the shit's going to hit the fan after they miss a certain number of meals. And they're going to break in your houses if they have to. It'll be kill or be killed, right? So, where was I going to go with that? Oh, I read in this book, I bought a book called Surviving the Economic Collapse. A guy wrote it in Argentina after the economy melted down, the currency collapsed in Argentina. And he talked about a lot of practical tips, guns and other things for self-defense. But he said it's safer to actually live in a city than it is in the country. He says, because if you live in the country, that's what a lot of people think, is to live remotely. But he's like, they'll break in your house and they'll rape and torture you for days, and nobody can hear you scream, and then eventually kill you after they'll rob you and kill you and rob you. And at least if you're like in a city, then, obviously people would hear the commotion and potentially call the police. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's delusional. And there was this real famous case in New York City where this woman was getting raped and murdered on the street and into her apartment building, and no one intervened for like 45 minutes.
I think I heard about that.
These were normal times. This wasn't things are falling apart. I'm sorry. When you have that high density of people are the problem. The more people you have around, the more chances you have for problems. I think that's someone who wants to make himself feel better about where he's at. And I think it would be a far better use of your time to like I said, start drawing some lines. Like, okay, if this one thing happens here, I don't believe I'll be safe, and I need an idea and a way to get somewhere where I would be safe. Lots of people call that bug out. Bug out sounds like weird and scary.
Yeah. Bug out means just get the hell out. It's time to go.
Yeah. But get out in an organized manner that you've thought through. Don't just like throw the dogs in the car and run, because being stranded on a highway, is just as bad as being isolated in your house. People are the problem. And the other thing is, there's no degree of dead. If someone breaks into my house and tortures me for 5 days, I'm still just as dead as if they knock down the door and shoot me in the head and grab my stuff and run.
Right.
And just the more people there are, the higher density population. It's axiomatic. You don't even have to. You can't argue. The more people there are in an area, the more crime there is, because there's more people to do crime, and there's more people to victimize, and there's more anonymity and thoughts that you can get away from it. Criminals go where the resources are, and they're going to go, like I said, to where the people are.
Right. Sure.
Most people can't have what I have here. I only have 2.4 acres. but it's really, really well situated, and I've got a stream, and I'm at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of this dirt road where you can go all the way to the end of the dirt road, and you still don't. I mean, you could think that it ends and there's nothing down there, and you still haven't gotten to me. I'm in a wonderful situation, an incredibly blessed place that I know most people don't have access to. I think most people could make their situations more secure than they are without having to do a bunch of weird prepper, bearded guy stuff. You can be normal and make yourself more secure where you're at.
Yeah.
But the closer you are to population centers, the more important it becomes is that you have a plan for leaving.
Yeah.
And the most important part of that plan is knowing when. What is it that's going to trigger you to leave? You can't be sitting there in the moment and saying, well, I think you have to have set triggers, and it could be multiple things. It's not like, or you could even have like 5 triggers, and when 3 of them hit, you're gone. I mean, there's all sorts of.
Can you give us some examples of those? Because I'm not sure. Like, I could totally see how this, things gradually heat up, and next thing you know, you're living in the midst of chaos without even noticing how bad things have gotten. So, I like this trigger idea. What are some examples?
So one would be, days without power. How long has the power been down? Every time there's like major blackouts in a city, looting starts almost right away.
Right.
So you might have a cutoff with, okay, days without power. You might say, okay, there's no food at the store. We can't buy food through normal means. That's a really big one in my mind.
Right. Sure.
Because that's when people, like you said, people start going really, really weird. What else?
Martial law.
I don't have this plan.
Martial law, right?
There's almost nowhere safer I could go to.
Martial law. Would martial law be one?
Okay, so like the fuel is running low, so I before you can't get gas to get where you want to go, you got to go. Because it doesn't matter if you have that bunker. If you can't get to it, it's not doing you any good. So, you've got to have a trigger in place that says, okay, before I'm incapable of making it to my safe location, I've got to leave to get there.
Mm-hmm. I said martial law. That could be one too. If they implement martial law, that means things are probably starting to go south. So that could be a trigger.
Martial law gets weird. So the best example of that was Hurricane Katrina. The best example of a lot of things was Hurricane Katrina. One of the things that happened with Hurricane Katrina is that they wanted everyone out of Louisiana or New Orleans. But what they were doing is they had roadblocks up. And as you left, they stopped you. And I know men who were part of these roadblocks who greatly regret it now, but they were young men at the time, and they were following orders, and they didn't know what they were. And they would strip them of everything. They'd take all their guns, they would take any valuables, and they just send them on their way. And they didn't even really know why. He says even now, the last time I talked to him about it, it's like, I'm not sure what we were doing or why. He said he wasn't even sure. They weren't stealing it, and he's not even sure that the orders came down from up above. It was just like they felt like they had to do something, or I don't know. So yeah, once martial law gets imposed, you need to be gone already. Martial law is a very bad thing because again, you don't know, can you get out? How are they? What's it going to take to get out? What can you take with you when you go?
Yeah.
Do they give you options to go where you want to go, or are they putting you on the bus and suddenly you're at a constant, a refugee camp somewhere when you had this wonderful option for yourself but they just shuttled you, put you on a bus and took you where they wanted, you could take one bag and nothing else. And then what do you, no weapons and
right.
Suddenly you're a slave.
Think about the Jews. It almost reminds me of the Jews in Germany. At some point they couldn't get out, right? They had chances and they kept refusing to look at the signs. And the next thing you know, you can't leave. I really want to get into some of the more practical steps that people can take for prepping for normal people, as you put it. But before I do that, I want to ask you this question. When you tell people like to get out, like, you have the triggers to get out, where should they go? Find like a relative that lives out in the country, or,
This is a big deal, and this is why you have to be deliberate beforehand about this. You've got to have, and even your benevolent federal government tells you this, that you need an evacuation, emergency evacuation plan, which is all what a bug out is. Yeah, you need, and you have to have it set up beforehand. You can't, oh my God, the world's going nuts. Call Aunt Bertha and say, Aunt Bertha, can me and the dog show up? And Aunt Bertha, her life's going nuts too at the moment. You might not even be able to get in touch with her,
Right, sure.
But yeah, you've got to have this set up beforehand. There's a bunch of good options, especially, God, being a family unit, a man and a wife and children is such a strong core that if you can pick that unit up and move it anywhere, you have a really good chance of survival. But some things people don't think about who like, oh, I don't have family, I don't have money. This really is just camping. And if you can get yourself to a campsite and focus on what's called primitive camping in national forest. And most of us have national forest within striking distance that has primitive camping available at it. These will almost always have water sources. They'll almost always be campsites. And you can legally stay there. Not that we care about that in this scenario, but these places, allow you to stay there for 2 weeks at a time. And then all you have to do is pick up and move campsites, even if you're worried about the law at all. But the point being that if you've done your job right and you've got all your peanut butter and you've got your water filtration system, all you have to do is throw your peanut butter and your water filter and a bunch of blankets and some tarps in the truck and you're gone, or car and you're gone. Mm-hmm. This will literally fit in the trunk of your car. Are you living great? Absolutely not, but you're living.
Sure.
So don't tell me that oh, I can't do it because I can't afford a 40-acre farm in the Catskills. You don't need a 40-acre farm in the Catskills. You're not necessarily even trying to live for 6 weeks or 6 months, or you're buying yourself time. If you can live for 2 weeks in the woods somewhere,
till things die down,
that puts you ahead of everybody else, and that lets the panic stop. And things calm down, and you can make some better decisions and get better information. By the way, if you do this, the number one thing you have to have, the most important tool, is a shovel. Anyone who doesn't tell you to have a shovel has not tried to do this before, and they don't have practical experience. In fact, it's scriptural. There is a passage in the Bible that says that when you're traveling through the land with your weapon, he's talking about the militia activities. I'm sure we don't want to get into all that. But he said, have with you a shovel. It's the only required piece of gear in scripture that I'm aware of. But yeah, because if nothing else, you've got to be able to bury your waste, because your waste is
right.
When scripture says it's not what goes into a man, but what comes out of him that defiles him, there is both a spiritual and a physical reality being talked about there. And if you have unburied waste, human waste, near where you're living and eating, you will die. You will get dysentery disease and you will die. And I don't care what else you have all the food you can have, if the fly can land on your feces and then go and land on your food, you will die. So you have to have a shovel. Sorry, that was an aside.
No, it's good. So you said camping supplies is going to be wise. I'm writing all this stuff down. So that would be, and you said you would be able to stay at like a campground, or would you even have to pay at that point if there was some kind of
so the primitive camping, if all the systems are in place, if the park service is functioning, then yeah, you have to do the parking. So whatever the parking fees are.
Right.
And again, this is something you need to just get a handle on beforehand, because obviously I've never been to every park in America, but yeah, we're talking about dollars a day.
Yeah, sure.
And you don't need a bunch of equipment. You need tarps, you need blankets, you need ropes. There's things that would make your life more comfortable, sleeping mats, or cots even. But when you're just trying to survive, when you're trying to keep alive, it's amazing what you can
tolerate. Yeah. Okay. So so let me ask you this. I like Glenn Beck a lot. Glenn Beck, I think he's pretty on point, and he was talking about some of the stuff happening that God told me years ago. He said, he predicted by 2025 that we would be at war with China and that we would be living in some kind of police state. I don't even know what that means, actually. I'm like, it kind of almost sounds like what you're talking about, where they tell you when you can go, when you can travel, when you can't, checkpoints or whatever. Probably, he said, wherever you're at, that's where you'll be. Like, you won't be able to just hop on a plane maybe and go somewhere. He said by 2025 this is going to happen, that he predicted it. So this is just a little over a year away. And I've been
how
thinking,
close we got in COVID.
Right. Yeah. So I've been thinking, like, maybe it'd be better to live in another country, because I was looking at articles on best places to live. If World War III breaks out in different pockets of the world that might not be touched or affected, but then some people say that, it, as an American, you'd probably be more vulnerable actually, out of America than you would be in America, even during a war. And I'm like, I don't know what to think. Like, now,
it's hard being the other. When you're the other, you're pretty vulnerable. Right. I don't know. That's a good question. It's not an option for me. I just don't have the resources to be able to move.
You got to
all the people I would have to move. So it's not something I'm familiar with. But, I've always had the fantasy about the sailboat and, just sail off to the South Pacific and live on an island until it all blows over and everything.
Boats. Interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, boat. Because somebody said boat, like a boat that was one of the things that was on their list, a boat that would take them pretty much anywhere. Like, they could take it out in the ocean if need be. And I was like, and I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about a boat. Because if the planes are down, right, if they ground the flights or whatever, okay, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Let's keep going on the practical stuff, though. So I got a pretty good list here. If anybody's just tuning in, got to have a water filtration, some way to filter your water. Maybe have some water stored, 50-gallon jugs. Ideally, first task is learn how to boil a gallon of water over an open flame. That's something Zach suggested, so you can see what it's like. What about wood? We talked about, maybe not. Charcoal, as you said, was wise. Tools was something I wrote down because I figured, like a good tool set would probably be very useful.
We can cover that real quick. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Shovel, obviously, is an incredibly important one, most important one. An axe is the second most important one. Axe. If you have an axe and a shovel, you're a long way where you need to be. Lots of guys love saws. I have this whole thing with a saw. I've got this whole series of videos where I debunk saws for survival situations. It doesn't hurt to have a general purpose saw, like a silky saw, which is a really good general purpose saw that lasts a long time. I have this whole thing with saws, but it's not a bad thing to have. And then the axe you want is a boy's axe or a camp axe. And Collins, and this is just simple. You can get axes are like everything else in the world. You can make it as complicated as you want. But if you have a camp axe, a Collins camp axe, it's a really good design. It's solid steel. It's a good handle. It's small enough to be portable. It's big enough to be useful. And it's not going to wear you out because if you don't know how, if you, this was, here I go. I'm going to be Jim Bro again, and I don't want to be Jim Bro. But if you're going to start worrying about some of that stuff, you really need to not just buy an axe and stick it in a corner. You really need to go out and use the axe. Because first off, they can be incredibly dangerous. Mm-hmm. If you let go of it and it flies off, you kill somebody, or you can miss and you can break your own leg. Right. And there's been people who've died in axe accidents, which sounds ridiculous, but they've chopped themselves with their own axe and they've bled to death, or they've broken their leg. And then that's one advantage a saw has, is that it's much safer than an axe. The axe can do a bunch more work. I'm a big proponent of axes. I love them. I could walk you here. I've got axes piled up in the corner. I have axes hanging on the wall. I have axes in the shit. I love axes. But you really do need to spend some time with one if you're going to count on it. And you would, in any long survival situation, you would have to be able to count on your axe. But yeah, just a Collins camp axe.
I want to know if I can I build a tiny home on your property to come stay in when the shit hits the fan?
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you come build it.
So, okay. So we got some tools you just mentioned. We talked about a bug out bag, and you can look out, and a bug out plan, even more importantly, like where are you going to bug out to?
The plan is more important than the bag.
Yeah. Some camping supplies, some basic camping supplies. Okay. What, and then food.
Can I, when we say camping supplies too, can I go ahead and say that this doesn't have to be like expensive tents and like all this crazy consumerist equipment. We're talking blankets, and we're talking tarps, and we're talking some cord, and then your water filtration and your peanut butter. This can be so incredibly simple. You can go buy a tarp, and you a big one, because for like $20, and you buy a thing of cord for $10, and then you just grab the blankets. Yeah, string it up
over top.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I wasn't
sure. It's going to be trial and error, and it's going to be experiment, and it's not going to work perfect, and you're going to get wet sometimes, and it's going to blow over, and you're going to have to set it back. But that's okay, because there's going to be a learning process, and you're going to do it, and you're going to overcome, because you're smart and capable, and you're not a helpless moron. But so many people use that. Oh, I can't afford the camping equipment, and they have envisioned in their mind, trailers filled with all this, high-end, whatever I don't even know what the high-end companies are anymore. I'm a Walmart shopper. So for us, high-end would be Ozark Trail. And they're like, oh, I can't spend thousands of dollars on camping equipment. Well, you don't, go buy 2 tarps, 100 foot of 550 cord.
Is that like an elastic cord, or is that just like what is that?
You don't want it to be too elastic.
Okay.
Yeah. This is 100-yard spool right there. I don't know what y'all can see. You get 2 of these, and you can rig anything, because you're going to have your axe, and you're going to be able to cut poles and all this. You're going to blow your mind at what you're capable of doing. When you have, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And if you just have some basic resources at your disposal, man, you're going to be able to do great. And you're going to be like, why does this moron have a YouTube channel? Anyone can do this. Mm-hmm. And you really can, with just some basic knowledge and some basic, pieces of infrastructure, rope, tarp, basic hand tools. Don't forget the shovel, have your calories, be able to filter your water. And it can be as simple as, like I said, that, and you don't have to have thousands and thousands of dollars. And
got it. Somebody said the video's lagging. Online money is how are we doing now? Seems like Zach's coming through to me crystal clear. Drop a comment, let us know if everything's clear. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. So the only other thing that we didn't mention was food, because we did mention it, but I didn't recap it. Food was the other thing. Zach and I talked about, try to have if you can build up with a week, start with a week, go to 2 weeks, eventually maybe 6 months, and then even further if you so desire. But okay, they said we're fine now. Good. So what are we missing? So we talked about everything that we just mentioned: food, water, tools, some camping supplies. What else?
Well, we didn't talk about the fun stuff.
Self-defense. Okay, let me tell you what I've done. Well, all I've really done is gotten a shotgun, because I'm told that that's the best home defense item. Because the guy even told me when I bought it, he said, just when they come in, they hear you do that, cock it. He's like, they're probably gone. So I have that, and then I've also heard a big dog is a really good home protection, item. Yeah. So what do you recommend for normal people?
So I do have big dogs. I have 3 Great Pyrenees. I love them. They are resource intensive. Once calories become a thing, Big dogs consume a lot of calories. You just got to keep it in the back of your mind. But dogs are an emotional thing. You know, it's not logical. So you're either going to have them or you're not. If you have them, then you've got to make account for them, and then you make use of them. I like mine. You know, if I was worried about, you know, having to bug out, I would want a medium-sized dog, nothing bigger than a German Shepherd. But the shotgun, yeah, I'm assuming you got a 12 gauge pump. Classic choice. You can't go wrong with a 12 gauge shotgun. It is so versatile. You can do so much with it. It is a bit much for smaller frame people, but there's workarounds with that, with low powered ammunition. Let's see if I've got this nearby. Oh, I'm so old. No, that's rifle. Here it goes. So this is a really high-powered buckshot self-defense load. You know, drop anything at 80 yards to 100 yards if you're really good. This is going to punish a woman or even an older child a lot to shoot. They've got this wonderful thing. I think these are fantastic. They're called mini shells. And compare it, you can see the difference there. And you can get more of these in the magazine, but your magazine has to be optimized to shoot these. So that's an option that if all you want is the 12 gauge, and you don't have to worry about anyone. Obviously, you're going to be able to handle it fine. There's nothing, you know, you'd have to worry about. I would, you know, if we're talking to like that single woman who you said we've got some single women in the stream, I would suggest two things, and both are a little outside the norm. So if you talk to 10 guys like me, you might not get this answer again. But there's this thing called an AR-9, and it's a category of gun. It's not one gun, but it is what's called a pistol caliber carbine, or PCC. And what it does is it takes a 9mm pistol cartridge, just like well, I won't try to do this on camera because I'll never find it. But
yeah, the video is lagging now for me too. By the way, it's just kind of like coming in and out.
Maybe I should try not to move so much.
Yeah, I think it's when you're moving around it starts doing that.
So you take a 9mm round, just like would be in anyone's pistol, and it puts it in a small rifle package with a longer barrel, and it makes it much more powerful. I shouldn't say much more, but it makes it significantly more powerful, and it's incredibly controllable, and it's very lethal on game animals and people out to about 100 yards. And it has zero kick, and it fires a ubiquitous round that's always going to be available. And I think if a woman, especially a single woman, came to me and said, you know, I want one weapon that would have to defend my house, and if I ever had to bug out, it would be the weapon I would take, I would tell her to get a pistol caliber carbine AR-9. And there's a lot of good options of them out there. Some of the most affordable, best ones are from a company called Palmetto State Armory. There's a few other options in that same vein. Ruger has this thing called the police carbine, which it shoots the 9mm in a rifle size package. Very, very reliable, very effective. It's a little heavy. That's 7 pounds, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you're trying to carry it all day long with your food and your water and your, you know. And then the one I really like, but just because it strokes my ego, is there's this whole category of lever action rifles, you know, like a cowboy looking rifle, but they're chambered in pistol calibers. 357 Magnum and 44 Magnum are the two most common. And so they don't look scary. You know, they don't look like the AR-9s look like an AR-15. That's why they call them AR-9s. And they're black and they're plastic and they look tactical. And some people don't like that. But if you get one of these lever action rifles, Henry makes one. Rossi makes the best one in my opinion. Marlin makes some, and I'm sure there's others, but those are the three big ones. Now you've got a rock solid, reliable to the end of time little rifle that's light, that's handy, that hits really, really hard out to about 150 yards. You know, if you had to shoot a bear, you know, you wouldn't worry about shooting a bear with one of these. You could pretty much kill anything you needed to kill within reasonable ranges, and you don't look like Scary Man. And they're really, really cool. And I'm a gun guy, so cool matters to me. Probably the best middle ground in all of this. I like pistols. I carry pistols. I would show you all of mine right now, but I don't want to dump the stream. Pistols take a lot of training to maintain your skill level at. They're very hard to use effectively, and they have an incredibly limited range, 25 yards. You've got to be a really, really good pistol smith to be effective past 25 yards, especially with a 9mm pistol, or with any pistol. Very hard to be accurate with, hard to get good follow-up shots. They have a complicated, what's called a manual of arms, deploying a pistol safely and then engaging your. It's a skill set, and it's a skill set that has to be maintained.
Right.
So I really don't suggest pistols for people who don't want to be, gun people, who don't want to make, the guns be a part of their lives. I really think that these pistol caliber carbines, and like I said, that's just small. They look like rifles, but they fire pistol bullets. And kind of the middle ground on everything right now, a company called Henry has made one called the Homesteader. And it really is the best option. It's semi-automatic. It doesn't necessarily look like a tactical gun. It's got wood furniture, so it looks a little more traditional, so it doesn't freak people out as much, including law enforcement, which is a big deal. Law enforcement sees that brown wood, and the first thing they don't think is, crazy militiaman. The first thing they might think is, good old boy hunter. That is not an insubstantial consideration.
Let me ask you this. I saw this gun on YouTube. It looks like a gun. It looks like a handgun. It's black, but it shoots some kind of like pellet that when it hits you, it like pepper sprays you. Have you heard about this?
Yeah. And you can actually get bullets for your gun that does the same thing.
I was just wondering what you think about that, because if somebody was against guns, maybe they're afraid, they're going to shoot the wrong person, or I don't know. This. Hold
on one second. We're about to have a cameo.
Okay.
Sorry, she woke up and she was on the edge of the bed, and I didn't want her to fall off.
Hi.
I can't get a good say hello. Anyway, so here's my problem with that. If you don't like guns, don't carry a gun. But if you think you need to deter someone, then you got to carry a gun. That's not going to be effective. You can't count on that being effective. What anyone you're willing to shoot with that is someone you need. Before you're willing to shoot that, you've got to be willing to kill them anyway. So why are we doing this half measure, pretending to be?
Well, let me ask you this. Why? What about a rifle though? Isn't that going to be hard to whip out a rifle and point it at somebody? Let's say you're on the road. Even my shotgun, I've thought about. Like, it's great for home protection, but once I leave the house, how am I going to whip out a shotgun if somebody comes up to my car window to try to jack me? Like, aren't I going to?
If you're in a car, and a car is the one place where the pistol rule doesn't apply. Cars are the one place where pistols are probably the more effective option. If you think you have to deploy it from a seating position in your car, then you probably are better off with a pistol. But now, if you don't have a sling on your shotgun, that's something you need to think about getting, because if you're traveling, especially on foot in a situation, you want it slung over your
sling.
Your
that's
shoulder.
Good. Okay, yeah, I don't think I have one. All right, that's good. I'm writing it down.
and then that's actually easier to deploy than a pistol. And you really need to, and I want to be careful here, because people have killed themselves doing this. Practicing their drawing their pistol from a holster. People die practicing this because they shoot themselves in the leg. And you've got that artery right there, and you bleed out on a range at the best of times. It is always 95% of the time you will always be more effective, faster with a rifle or long gun, let's say a long gun, than a pistol.
Okay.
And if you ever get access to a pistol and a holster and it can be done safely, just try a couple. Don't quick draw, because you shoot yourself, or do this unloaded. Obviously, we said do it safely, but just practice grabbing that thing and bringing it up. It's not simple. It's not easy. It's not. You want to get down? It's not a. She wasn't ready to wake up. I was being too loud. It's not a simple process, especially because here's the other thing: if you do the pistol, you have to have a retention holster. I have been humiliated 4 times in my life with firearms. 2 of them I won't tell you about because they're so humiliating. 2 of the times I wish I didn't have to tell you about because they're so humiliating, but they apply to this. One time I was carrying concealed, and I was at a gas station, and it was raining, and I ran from the pumps into the store, and the action of running across that parking lot caused my pistol to fall out of my holster and hit the ground in the middle of the parking lot. Terrible. I mean,
it didn't go off though, right?
A safe pistol shouldn't go off from being dropped like that. But she can't open the door now. But still, and then that same year, and I didn't learn my lesson. That same year, I was at a restaurant out on a patio deck, and I was leaned up against the railing. And when I went, it was that same holster and that same pistol. And I went to stand up, and when I did, my pistol hooked up underneath the railing, and it pulled it out of my holster, and it hit the deck. So you have to have what's called a retention holster, and that complicates drawing your pistol. But there's no point in having a pistol if it falls out while you're running or jumping, or it's easy for someone to come and snag it and pull it out. Mm-hmm. So especially when you add in a retention holster, and I've got one right there. I guess my carry holster now. I won't carry a pistol now without retention on it. So it just gets very hard to deploy pistols.
Got it. I got to jump off of here in about 2 minutes because I have another. No, it's just great. This has been great. No, this is awesome. I actually have one more question because I think this person's asked twice, or I've seen this question twice, and it was medical equipment recommendations. Can you give us like 30, 60 seconds on what you would suggest for that?
So again, other preppers are going to excoriate me for this. This is my first aid kit. It's just a basic first aid kit. You want to be able to sew up cuts and some antibiotics and some bandages. But if you think you're performing surgery, you're not. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. This comes into that. Don't make it. This comes under that. You can't eliminate all risks. At some point, you have to accept that sometimes bad things happen. So yeah, I have a basic first aid kit. It's not a very big one. I have 2. The other one I think is on a pack. But I do actually have, and I do buy. I get good ones. I don't put these together myself. I go to expert sources and get a decent kit. This is another place where I say, bite the bullet, and this would be a place to invest in gear. Usually I'm all about no gear or as simple as possible, but this is one of those areas where you need to probably trust an expert. This one was put together for me custom by a guy I trust who has a lot of experience in trauma medicine. So there's gloves in there. There's the bandages. There's the scissors. There's some sutures and some stitches. Gauze, saline, your basic trauma stuff. Because that's all you're going to be able to handle. And if something worse happens than that, now you've got to go look for help, or you've just got to deal with it.
All right, let me do this. I want to really quickly summarize the key takeaways from our conversation. Okay, so first one, most important, is water. You got to have a way to make sure you have clean water. 5 gallons a day is what you're going to be using. So a water filtration system, maybe even some water stored in 50-gallon jugs that you can get access to, and they'll be good for like up to 2 years. Some tools. The tools that Zach suggested was a shovel, an axe, a camp axe, a saw. Food, peanut butter is going to go a long way, but start with a week, build your way up. Bug out bag, a bug out plan, knowing where you're going to go in advance, having that worked out. Some basic camping supplies, self-defense. We talked about a shotgun or a barrel rifle, the rifle that he mentioned, and maybe I could put that in the show notes if you can give me a link to that. And then a first aid kit. And those are you're going to be, what would you say, ahead of what, 99% of the people out there if you have those items?
99.9.
Right.
Even the vast majority of people who call themselves preppers are not prepped at those basic levels. They're buying stupid gear and plastic Chinese shit, and they're throwing it in a corner of the garage, and they don't know how to use it, and they haven't addressed water, and they haven't addressed any of this big calories. And until you address water and until you address calories, everything else is masturbatory. And sorry to be explicit, but that it is. It's just a total self-flagellating waste of time until you address water and calories.
This has been great. I appreciate it, Zach. Thank you for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you on YouTube and anywhere else.
Yeah, it's just the Revolting Man. It's a little small channel. I'm proud of it, but that's just because I'm a silly man. And that's really our only outlet right now. I keep talking about I'm going to build, but I never build. I'm always, 3 sheets to the wind. But it means I won't die of a heart attack. I'm also always very happy and calm. So I'm not working myself to death.
Well, 15 kids, you sounds like you're working yourself to death.
I throw that number out there because it's so impressive and it makes everyone's eyes go big. But 6 of them have aged out. So it's actually only 9.
Okay.
So I'm not even really being that honest about the 15.
Right. Okay. I was going to say your poor wife. No, I'm kidding. She probably loves it.
She handles it really, really well. We are a blended family. So 9 of those children came from her. And then I brought 6 into the marriage.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hey, everybody, please subscribe to the Revolting Man. Check out his channel, leave reviews. Share the podcast with friends or somebody that might benefit from the discussion. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Oh, one last thing. Join the Unplugged Christian Alphas. If you're a man out there, you're looking to level up and potentially land a high-value Christian woman, join the Unplugged Christian Alphas. It's 100% free. And if you're trying to save sex for marriage, join the Waiting Works community on Facebook. Both groups are free to join, and we'd love to have you. So talk to you later.